Welcome back, guys. Hope you are doing great. In our previous video, we learned how to work with the React hooks like useEffect, useContext, and some state management libraries like Suspense and Redux Toolkit. But today, in this video, we are going to answer a very important question, which is useEffect really the best way to fetch the data in modern React? Well, in this video, you're going to learn why useEffect is not ideal for data fetching, how React Query works, and how Suspense amplifies the loading states, and how lazy loading improves the performance. And finally, we're going to build a professional and production ready setup for data fetching by using the Suspense fallback UI, lazy loading, and along with the use query, the React query. Okay, so if you haven't watched the previous video, so you can watch them by click the link in the description below, or you can tap it on the top right side corner. So please go ahead and watch those React hook concepts. Then you can jump in over here. All right, so without wasting your time, let's get started. So here I do already have a plain empty React application with JavaScript. So let me be in my app.jsx. So in this very first section, we're going to discuss the problem with the use effect. So what's the real problem with the use effect? Okay, so let's understand the problem with the use effect. So for that, we need an API. So I'm just going to use the JSON placeholder API. This one, the fake test. Okay, so we can use this. So here in the app.jsx, I'm going to use the use effect. Let's bring the use effect hook. It has two different parameters. One is the function and another one was the array dependency. Inside this function, I'm just going to simply copy this code and I'm going to paste it. Instead of fetching just this to-dos, I'm going to fetch the post. I'm going to use this one, post. Okay, so it's going to fetch the data and it's going to log the data in our application. Okay, so for that, save it. I'm just going to inspect the elements, and in the console, if you check it out, you can see we have the hundreds of arrays of data. Okay, so it works, but if you think it is really efficient, but it's not. So we need the use state, right? Of course, instead over here to store the data, we need a local state to collect it and store it. That's the first point. Then we need the loading state. So here, if due to some reasons, if the APIs are getting some time lags or anything, it needs to show some fallback UI like a loading state. We don't have that, but we need to include it. Then here it doesn't have a proper error handling. We need to catch the error and we need to display the error and we need to intimate the user that is some issues happening over here, so you can try again later, something like that. Then we need a proper cleanup. Then we need an abort controller, right? If the user doesn't want to load the data, we need to show the abort controller for the user. Then we need to handle the everything in the strict mode, right? So this is too much responsibility for one particular hook, which is the use effect. So useEffect was never designed as a data fetching solution, right? So what is the solution? So this is the place where we have to talk about the React query. This guy. So the React query is the library, which is nothing but it's just a library which that manages the server state for us. Okay. So let me highlight the key points. What are the key points? So it handle the first, what is it going to handle? It's going to handle the caching. Then it's going to handle the deduplications. Deduplication is nothing but is the process of scanning and eliminating the duplicate records. Then background refresh. We need to refresh every single data that needs to be refetched at a certain points, right? So refetch. Then automatic loading and error handling. Automatic loading and error handling. That's the most important thing that we need to worry about. So instead of managing everything manually, we describe what data we want and the React query handles the rest. We don't have to handle anything less than that. So let me show you how to do that now. So let me explain the syntax and later we can talk about it much later. Okay, so here, for instance, instead of handling these stuffs like this, okay, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a function. For instance, let's say const fetch data post, something like this, an arrow function, open it, which in case this function needs to be an asynchronous function. Okay, and inside here I'm just going to say const response is equals to await fetch. We need to get that data, so let's apply the API, copy it and supply it over here. Okay, then at the end it's going to return the response.json data. Okay, this is just a function. Then right after here we are going to use the useQuery hook, which is the third external library. So I'm just going to extract an object from where? From useQuery, which we don't have that package yet, so don't worry, later I will show you what are the package that you need to download and install. But at this point I'm just going to explain you the syntax and the situations. Okay, so here this you need to supply the query key. So this is going to be the post. Then you need to supply the query function, which that function is going to be your fetch data post. Okay, and inside over here, inside here, I need to fetch the data, whether it is still loading or is there any error is happening. These are the data instance that we can get returned back from the use queries. Okay, so let me explain what is all these stuffs over here. So here the query key, that's the most important thing. That's the unique catch identifier. So this is the place where we are collecting the data and making sure which one is because in a real case scenarios, you might fetch multiple data from the APIs. So you need to access the unique key identifiers for each and every data fetch. Then you need to supply the query function, the function that which fetches the data. Okay, then the react query, what is it exactly is doing? It catches the every results. Okay, so it doesn't need to refetch the data without any updates or anything, right? It catches the results completely, and then it shares it across the components. You can share the data across any component, and the refetches, it's completely intelligent. Okay, so it doesn't refetch for a certain time period again and again. The refetch is completely intelligent. If there is no changes, it's not going to do that. Okay, then let's talk about the next important stuff that we need to. Once since we have the data now how we are going to supply it into the component, right? So that's the place where we have to discuss about the suspense. So react suspense, that react passes the during the time of rendering, right? So react suspense let react pass rendering until something is ready behind the step. So if something is still loading, the suspense will show the fallback UI and make sure that the rest of the stuff is completely ready to show in the client side. Until then, it is going to display the fallback UI, right? So here, instead of loading something, so we used to do this, right? If is loading is return, if it is still loading, we will return a separate component, right? Instead of doing that, what we will do, we load the suspense. We load the suspense, then we'll set a fallback UI with the loading component until this post is completely ready. Until it's getting ready, it's going to display this fallback UI. So that's the beauty of using the suspense. Okay, so I'm just explaining why we need all these stuffs, and later I will show you the code completely so you can understand and you can visualize how all these stuffs are being working, right? Because if I'm not explaining it properly and writing directly the code, it is not going to help you out. So just try to listen and understand what are these purposes of these particular packages and everything. Now we know the suspense. Now how we can work with the suspense and the react query? So here we have one more option straight away. Right after here you have the suspense, which is you need to enable it as true when you're working with the react query. So the react query throws a promise and the suspense catches it. So the fallback UI will shows, and once the rendering resumes automatically, once the promise is being handled properly, it resumes automatically, right? That's the beauty of comparing the react query with the suspense, because it doesn't you don't need no is loading or no conditional rendering or no UI for the special for especially with the conditional rendering, and this is much cleaner code compared to this particular guy. Okay, that's the beauty of handling this. Now the third problem, when you're working with this, what happens if something issue is there, something runtime error is happening? how it is being handled, right? So because we have a separate stuff for the error, we can catch it, but how we are going to handle it, how we are going to display it in the screen, that's the most important thing. Suspense handles your loading issues, right? It handles it properly, but doesn't handle your errors. So you need something to handle the error, and that's the place where we have to discuss about the error boundaries. Error boundary. So suspense handles only the loading things. It doesn't handles the error, and that's the reason we use this error boundary guy. So how the coding should looks like, we use the error boundary component just like this. For the fallback, for the error component, we display the separate fallback UI, and for the loading, we use a separate fallback UI if everything is properly loaded, and we are going to display this post. So this gives us the full control over the loading and the error states as well as okay. And now let's talk about the one last thing, which is going to be your lazy loading. This is the most stuff you need to understand why we need the lazy loading. Basically, the lazy loading helps us to reduce the bundle size. It helps you to reduce the bundle size. So why we need the lazy loading? So the code is only loaded only when it's needed, okay? Because we need to keep the initial loading much faster, because if the component is too heavy, it takes some time to load on the client side. So if that component is needed, then load it. Otherwise, keep it. I don't want to load it. Then that's the place we need to use the lazy loading. So this is really helpful when it's perfect for the routes, and it's really perfect for the heavy pages, right? So here, think about it. The post, if the post is going to be receiving thousands and thousands or millions of records instant by the time when it's getting loading, it's going to be literally huge. So that's the place where we need to use the lazy loading. Think about it. For the posts, that's a component, right? So that I need to load that. So I'm going to use the lazy function, which is provided by the React. So I need to call a callback function, and I need to use the import. This needs to be imported dynamically only when I need it. So by this way, and we will put the post inside over here. So the lazy loading handles only if that component is being needed, then it gets loaded. Otherwise, it will not be loaded. Okay. So these are all the theory stuffs about what are the things that we are going to discuss about. What is the section one we discussed about what is the issue with the use effect, and we talked about the use query. Then we talked about the suspense. Then we talked about the error boundaries. Then we talked about the lazy loading. Now let's talk about how to implement all these stuff and build a professional level coding. Okay, so let's jump into the coding part. So before jumping into the coding part, we need a package that needs to be downloaded for the React query, right? So for working with the React query, we need to download this TanStack React query. TanStack React query. This is the one. You can go through it, how to work with all these stuffs and everything. This is the package that you need to download. Okay, so I'm gonna say npm add at TanStack React query. So hit the enter, let it download and clear it, then npm run dev. Close this. All right, now let me get into the main.jsx. This is the place. So here I'm just going to simply load the app, because that's the stuff which we discussed previously, so I don't want to worry about that now. Let me close that. Then here what I need to do is I need to bring certain stuff, import stuff. So import from where? From the at TanStack React query. From this React query, we need the query client to create a query client. Then we need to create a provider component. So let's bring the query client provider. So I need to wrap this app inside that query client provider. So the entire app will be wrapped inside that provider. Now I need to supply this client, right? So client, I need to create a new client instance. So what I'm going to do right after here, I'm just going to say const query client, which is equals to new query client. We created the query client, and let's supply that query client inside over here, right? So we supplied the query clients, and we created a new instance and supplied it, and now our app is being wrapped inside that part. Okay, so let me get back over here and let me keep it simple. RAFCE app.jsx. And if I refresh this, every stuff needs to be worked perfectly without any issue, so we don't have any errors at all. Now inside this app.jsx, so I'm going to delete this. So I'm going to import certain stuff from here. From where? From the React itself. I need the suspense and the lazy loading. Let's bring the suspense, and I need the lazy loading function. Okay, then I need the error boundaries. We need to handle the error boundaries, right? So for that, we need to get the React error boundary, this one, that particular package, React error boundary. So if you copy it and if you open it, you can understand their complete documentation, go through it, so you can understand what is this and all those stuff. So here I'm going to stop it anyway. pnpm run, sorry, add React boundary, clear, pnpm run dev. So let's refresh this. So there is no issues at all. And now I need to import that error boundaries as well as import from React error boundary. And here inside the React error boundary, let me bring the error boundary component. Perfect. Now the heavy component, which is going to be the posts component. So here I'm going to create myself a new component called posts.jsx, because this is the place where we are going to fetch the API and everything, right? So for the time being, I'm just going to say, oops, RAFCE, and I'm going to say posts. So let me get back to the app.jsx. So I need to bring the post components as the lazy loading component. So let's say const post is equals to lazy, open it, an arrow function. Then I need to import that component from the dot slash components slash posts. That's the components needs to be loaded lazy. Then for the error handling, of course, we're going to have a separate component for error loading and the error. So let's bring the loading.jsx and RAFCE. I'm just going to say loading, and inside the loading stuff, I'm just, for the time being, I'm going to display the text like this. Then we need to bring the error fallback UI as well as, so error.jsx. And here I'm just going to say RAFCE error fallback. So here we can simply say something went wrong, please try again later, something like this. So save it. This is the error handling and the loading fallback UIs which we needed. Now inside here, what I'm going to do is, first I need to wrap this entire division inside the error boundary. Then for this, I need to apply the fallback UI, which is going to be error fallback UI, which we do have in our hand. And inside here, I need to bring the suspense, and I need to say the fallback UI for the loading, which in case it's going to be the loading. Then inside the suspense, this is the place where we need to render our posts, which we loading a little bit later. So save it. Now you can see if I refresh it, it's showing loading state and it's displaying the post. It's handled it perfectly. Now inside this post.jsx, this is the place where we are going to use the real React queries and stuff and everything. So here I'm going to bring the import from at TanStack React query, and inside over here you need to get that use query, oops, not use queries, use query to create the query. So I need to fetch the data, right? So const fetch, either you can keep that function over here or keep that function somewhere else inside the library file and put it inside. Okay, for the better understanding, let me keep it right now over here, but in a real production level you should keep it in a separate file and handle all those things separately. Okay, just for understanding. Fetch post is equals to, I'm going to create an asynchronous function, and inside that function, oops, my bad. And inside this function, this is the place where we are going to say const response is equals to await fetch. We need that, copy this, fetch slash, we need to fetch the post, so posts. Okay, then right after here, if I don't have the response as dot okay, if that doesn't have, then I need to throw a new error. Throw new error. What that error is going to be, failed to fetch the post, something like this. If everything is okay, of course it's not going to, it's going to return this JSON data outside that function. Okay, now inside this post, inside over here, inside this post, this is the place where we need to use the query. So I'm just going to say const is equals to use query, open it, and here I just need the data. I don't need the loading state or error state, because we have a error boundary to handle the error, and we have the loading state for handle the loading. We have the suspense, so I don't need to collect that state. Just the data itself, it's enough for me. So here I need to say the query key. First, you need to set the query key for the unique caching identifier, which is going to be the post. Then I need to supply the query function, which function that it's going to use for the data fetch. I'm going to use the fetch post. Then we are using the suspense, right? So let's say suspense is equals to true. Save it. And now if I refresh this, okay, so so far there is no mistakes, and loading is working perfectly, and we are getting the data. Everything is loading perfectly over here. So if everything is loaded perfectly, I just need to display the data dot length. See, 100. Even if I refresh it, it will handles it perfectly. Okay, so yeah, that's the pretty much stuff, right? So if let's right after here, let me create one more division. Let's try to print all those things. So data dot map, let's get the each and every post out of it. Then I'm gonna create a paragraph tag, or let's go with the paragraph tag itself. Paragraph tag. Let's apply the key which is going to be the post.id. Then here I'm just going to bring the post.title. See, we have all those hundreds posts, titles, and everything. Now, even if I refresh it, the loading states will load it properly, and you will get that. And yeah, this is it. This is pretty much how you need to use, right? So the React query manages the React query manages the server state, and the suspense manages the loading UI for you, and the error boundary manages the errors, and the lazy loading improves your performance. So this is the modern React way to build your scalable applications, right? So yeah, that's the pretty much done. And if you have any questions, and if you have any doubts, or if I explained it anything in a wrong way, please comment it in the description. And if you are looking for any particular video or any concepts, please drop that in the comment sections as well as. And as I said, we are bringing the huge projects as well as, and we are dropping it in, we are going to drop it every Sunday, at least every Sunday or 2 weeks once. We are trying to bring the real full stack project for you. So stay tuned. You can drop all your requirements completely in the descriptions, and we are happy to help you out. All right, I'll see you in the next video.